Hello and welcome. Another episode of Steelfur Speaks. This time, 2022, first episode of the year. Hard to believe that I've actually been making videos now for almost, I got into the game in October 2019. I want to say 2020, October 2020. That sounds about right. Started making videos after a couple of months playing the game, maybe around March, April. So making videos for over 8 months is pretty exciting. What's happening in Flesh and Blood land? Oof, so much happening. Not going to go too much into spoilers these days. I mean, I want to talk a bit about the hero spoilers because I think that's quite interesting. Talk a bit about the bans, of course. Have to. It's what's on the topic. Talk a bit about my plans for this year and what's going to be going on. That kind of thing. That'll be today's episode. Let's just catch up on everything that's happening. Card market. Taking Flesh and Blood, this is quite good. Card market is, for those of you who don't know, in the US, it's probably one of the bigger European marketplaces. We could look it up if we want. Look up the if it ever loads. It's been a bit overloaded recently, but card market's like one of the bigger EU marketplaces for buying and selling card games. And you've got your Magic, your Yu-Gi-Oh. They're very slow apparently to adopt new card games, so even though you've still got some dead ones on here, it's because they were slow to adopt them originally. You can see we've got Flesh and Blood there now. And this is a good thing. I've used Card Market for ages. I don't know why it's trying to sign me up. I've used Card Market for ages for Magic the Gathering cards and stuff like that. It's pretty good. If someone has a good rating on here, they've usually earned it, we'll say. Cheapest Everfest box is £65. These are all pre-orders. It's a bit mad. Obviously, for me, that also involves quite a lot of shipping, so we're not going to be buying any of those. Cheapest WTR box is what? £48. Jesus. There is still a lot of WTR Unlimited in the marketplace. It's very important to remember that. The price has come down a lot. It is still a case that there is a lot of it in the marketplace, just slowly being eaten up by drafting and things like that. It's not an unlimited amount of it. That's why you've seen the price of things like Fables and stuff like that go up after the OOP announcements, just because people know there's now a much more limited version or number of them. But it's just worth knowing. Interesting to see, of course, the Blazing Ethers have started to sell. As we saw our new wizard. This is really the exciting preview so far. I mean, we haven't seen that many previews so far just because of the preview season actually starts in about 10 days' time. My preview is arriving tracked post tomorrow, so that will be quite exciting. But obviously, this is the big preview that we've seen so far. The Essence of Ice has 18 health, which is low for everyone, but high for a wizard, so I guess they're assuming that she can put out a decent bit of damage, which I actually think might be a misconception because she doesn't have Kano's power, but we'll see what happens. Her ability lets you play a non-attack action with a blue strip from Arsenal as if it was an instant. That includes everything from potions to the wizard cards like Zap and all those, which don't really deal much damage, but if they're an instant and they're easy to play, then who cares? But if you play an ice card during an opponent's turn, create a frostbite token under their control. So that includes things like Blizzard, Channel Lake Frigid, Winter Spy, all of those. But we'll have to see in gameplay how powerful this is. I suspect that in Everfest we'll see a load of new non-attack actions, and if we don't, then she won't be very good. But I think we will. I think we'll see ice non-attack actions, which will make her more relevant as a control-style deck. Though it has been confirmed there is no adult version of this hero, so she is just a blitz hero. And remember that in Crucible we did get, I think it was 8 or 6 young heroes. I think we will see a new hero for every class in this upcoming set. I fully expect to see every single class getting a new hero just because it's fun, right? They're going to be young heroes, they're going to be blitz heroes, they're hopefully not going to be majestics. I think tokens and rares are right for heroes. I don't like the idea of heroes being majestics. Just print them as tokens, make them really easy to get. I don't like the idea of gating them off because it's just not a fun pull, is it, from a pack? If you pull a hero from a pack, you either already have it or you don't want it because you don't play wizard. whereas other Majestics can be a bit more exciting. And then, of course, there's the fact that everyone only needs one of these. So whilst I'm fairly sure that even it's Majestic, it will be short printed, which means that it won't show up as regularly as other Majestics, but it'll still be something that isn't a chase card because people can only have one, and only if they like playing the hero, as versus, any generic Majestic, which is worth a lot more, or any class Majestic that's quite popular. I do think she will get specialization cards as well, because I think they want to give her cards that are powerful that don't boost Kano, so I expect to see some elemental wizard cards specifically rather than just wizard cards, so that she can play them without boosting up Kano. I do think that is one of the ways they're going to be balancing Kano in Everfest. I don't think they want to give him 12 new cards, because Kano is a lot more powerful than people realize. And also, the main problem with Kano is that when he's the best, it feels very bad for everyone else. So people are very wary of boosting up Kano a bit too much, because it could be a bit non-interactive if he starts winning all the time, because it's play a Kano mirror and then you'll see exactly what I mean. You never want to play one. You only ever want to play Kano into other people, which doesn't happen unless there's loads of Kanos in the tournament. So the best thing for everyone is that Kano isn't the most dominant deck in the format. Obviously, we've got our Welcome to Wraith events coming out. I did a whole video on timing and scheduling of that. It does seem the LSS have listened a little bit, because some stores are getting emails saying, look, if it doesn't work for you, if you can't do it that weekend because of something going on in your country, then please just let us know and see, maybe we can push it back 2 weeks. So there is a bit of hope there. The stores that are having clashes. We also have the Pro Quests coming up. Some people are a bit disappointed to see these cold foil heroes coming out again. I'm still trying to get my hands on a cold foil Oldhim and Briar, so I'm not that disappointed. Though it does make the National Championships a little bit less special, because these were given out as participation prize for that. However, the random gold drop cold foil for the winner is going to be the chase thing for this event. So it's super exciting to see that coming to so many places. I'm personally going to, I think, either 4 or 5. I don't really feel like killing myself going to loads of Pro Quests early on this year, just because I want to do some traveling with my girlfriend and generally just get around. But I'm going to go to 4 or 5 Pro Quests. I will hopefully get to more of those. If I get an invite, so the way it's working, if you're in Europe or if you're in anywhere, when you win a Pro Quest, you get an invite to the first Pro Tour. It's not transferable. It's not the first Pro Tour in your region. It is Pro Tour number 1, which will be in America somewhere. So you do have to think, if you're winning, are you prepared to travel? If not, maybe you should work out a concession to your opponent so that, they can get the prize, and you get something else, or you sort it out before you start playing the game, because if you're not going to travel and they are, you may as well give them the ticket and the invitation, and then if you win, you get the gold foil or something like that. You know what I mean. Whoever wins the game, the PTI goes to the person that actually is going to be able to go to it. It's just sensible to work those kind of things out, and have a frank conversation about that kind of thing. So that's the format. I'm really, really excited about it. These Azalea mats look pretty cool. People are a bit hype about them. There's obviously going to be Azalea generic cards in Everfest. That's probably where the art comes from. So it'll be exciting to see what happens there. Not much else to say about that. Obviously, we're going to have Everfest coming out, and then we're going to have the new meta for this. So I'm not really going to talk too much about the ProQuest meta, because realistically it's just far too early to start making conclusions about that until we see what Everfest is. We can, however, talk about the banned and restricted announcement briefly. I know there have been a lot of videos coming out about that, so we will be brief. Famous last words, as I always say. People are like, well, you say you're going to be brief and then you talk for 40 minutes, but we won't do that this time. The updates, for those of you who have been hiding under a rock and haven't seen them, or only tune into my channel for news, which is shocking, but thank you. Briar gets an errata, so you can only create 1 embodiment of Earth token a turn. Ball Lightning is banned in Classic Constructed, and Blitz. Plunder Run is banned in Classic Constructed, and Duskblade has finally been killed in Blitz. So let's just quickly talk through these. I want to give the hot takes. The Briar change is one of the possible changes that I suggested when I was discussing what they could do to fix Briar. Personally, I favoured the idea that she would only trigger off elemental attacks, because that still gives her the ability to have turns where she flexes up embodiment of Earth tokens. It just makes her deck building more restrictive into a certain way to focus on playing elemental cards as versus really powerful generics, which I think would have created a deck which was more focused around the themes of Tales of Aria, whereas the decks I've seen that have adapted to this are basically the Earth decks that are still playing tons of really good generics, like Exude Confidence, Command and Conquer, E-Strike, and are just using those as their one attack a turn. So it still feels like, even after the errata, that Briar isn't really set up to benefit from building a deck that's focused around elemental themes. It still feels like she's just a include good stuff deck, which isn't really, what I feel like heroes should be within this sole design philosophy that we've seen in the game. We've seen the design philosophy is building towards this horizontal, each talented hero feels like a separate faction that has to build a deck that rewards itself for playing cards that match up with the theme and the faction. And then you have Briar, which completely bucks the trend on that and says, actually, just play good generics and you'll get the theme for my hero. So it's a bit weird. It is what it is. I will draw attention to the fact that they have clearly printed promo versions of this card, and I will imagine that every event, potentially in an armory kit, but also maybe at the pro quests as well, these will be given away very, very liberally as double-sided tokens to anyone who needs one. People will be able to get some to take home. If I was LSS, I would print a ton of these and send them to the four corners of the world. So it's very, very easy to pick up an errated Briar card, because the whole point of this and the things with like Living Legend changing how cards work is that because they're a token and they don't go into the deck, it is possible to just churn out a ton of these and get them to people. It is possible to make it legal for people to play print and play versions of this. I was kind of surprised that this article didn't come with like a print your own PDF version of these cards. That would have been very smart, so people could print off an updated version of Briar at home if they wanted to, and just say that the proxy is legal until people can get their hands on an actual copy of the updated card. That should be the baseline for any hero erratas that happen in this game, or even equipment erratas as well, is that you basically should enable proxy legality and just say, look, if you demonstrate you have a real version of the card for the equipment or the hero, you can play the errated version of the card as a proxy or a token, which I think is important and just a good way of making things smooth. And I already know that some people have been talking about printing off a copy of this for next week. It would have just been nice if it had come in a ready-to-print PDF or something like that. Okay, so to talk more about Briar. So we end up in a situation where Embodiments of Earth led to 2 defense cards being able to block for 4 or 5, which was really a problem because essentially it rewarded Briar too much for multiple attacks, and meant that Briar, by attacking lots, could defend more than other decks could defend, right? That's very simple. It's a problem. That's their logic here. The issue, I think, with the change to the deck, and I say this is interesting, is that all it does is essentially make all of those NAF 2 block non-attack actions you have to play to enable the second ability block for as much as regular cards in most other heroes decks. Most heroes cards in Katsu and Bravo and Old Him, and even if you look at like not the new ones, but if you look traditionally at heroes, most cards do block for 3. 3 is a good baseline block for a lot of cards, especially in even people like Dash and all those heroes have cards that block for 3. This is just negating the downside of playing the cards which could have just had 3 block printed on a few more cards and been balanced that way. Now, if you don't get an Earth token, they're bad, but if you get one, they're the same as other people's. So it's kind of like removing the interesting ability of the flex of being able to make more embodiment tokens on a turn in order to get your ability. I would have, there's other ways that you could have potentially fixed this. One of the things that I thought would be quite interesting is a change to say, the first time is when your first non-attack action, when your first attack action card deals damage, create an embodiment of Earth token. So that means you're rewarded for a single attack that stacks in arcane damage rather than multiple attacks that could just be random generics. So it will be, okay, Bramble Spark will get you 2 embodiment tokens, and if you play 2 Bramble Sparks, you might be able to get 3, and if you play a Sting of Sorcery and a Bramble Spark, you can get 2, but you're not going to get one for doing, E-Strike into CNC, right? or playing 4 or 5 attacks in a turn. So you really do have to build your deck in a way to maximize the gaining of embodiment of Earth tokens rather than just being able to play really powerful generics and get them. And I also would have still made that change to say elemental. So if you could imagine instead, this said when the first elemental attack action you control deals damage to an opposing hero each turn, create an embodiment of Earth token for every instance of damage dealt, or something along those lines. And that means that you have to play elemental attacks. You have to stack arcane damage onto those attacks. It means that your explosive growth works as intended, which is as a poke that gets you 2 embodiment tokens. But it means that playing something like CNC after a bramble spark doesn't get you embodiment tokens. So you have to take that gamble as, do I want generics or do I want elemental? And I have to stack up the cards. And it turns Briar into this earth-focused go tall deck, or it makes them, you have to do some weird stuff to get the maximum lightning effects out of it. That would have been an interesting alternative. This is fine. This is still very strong. It still enables all of those cards like Channel Mount Heroic, Whisper of the Oracle, all the ones they've been playing that block for 3 to block for 4, which is really where the strength of this comes. You hit with 1 on attack action, and all of your come to fights and your Whispers of the Oracles and your Channel Mount Heroics now block for 4, and suddenly you've got a really strong defense reaction, which isn't a defense reaction. So this is still a very strong ability. I personally would have liked to see slight differences in it, but I understand the reason they've chosen what they have. It limits it to a very specific axis of play, and limits it so that no card is ever going to block for a ridiculous amount of damage. It kind of makes sense. Ball Lightning is a weird choice to ban, just because it is strong, but I don't know that it's that strong. There's been some debate as to maybe they've banned it because it's essentially too complicated. Ruling-wise, I've heard from judges at national championships and drafts and things like that Ball Lightning is one of the most repeated judge calls to a table that they've had, and they just got bored of answering questions about it. People just didn't seem to be able to get how it worked with the replacement effects and things like that. I will say it does feel a bit bad for Lexi, who relied on this quite a lot, but clearly Lightning Briar is making Lexi have problems, which is going to be the case when you have overlapping card pools. Sometimes cards will suffer for others. I agree quite heavily with the Plunder Run ban. We've seen in this set the addition of 3 new cards that draw cards from Arsenal, and they cost 1. And those cards are very, very balanced because you have to pay a cost in order to get that effect, as well as playing it from Arsenal. But because you have to pay the cost, they're happy with you drawing the card in advance. So you get consistent draw in exchange for having to pay for it. But I think that that's a much more balanced format, because it means it takes a card out of your hand. The main problem with Plunder Run is that if you're running a cheap deck, you don't have to take a card out from your hand in order to draw a card, which means that you essentially get not only the boost from the card, but you also get the benefit from actually getting a free extra card. And that's really where the problem comes in. Because I have a 5-card hand, I play Plunder Run and then play a free attack. You have to fully block it, and it could be 7 damage, which is 2 cards and a piece of equipment. And if you don't do that, then I draw a card. And then if I play another 0-cost attack, I'm still playing with a 6-card hand. I haven't had to pitch anything, because you won't be able to block all of the attacks. So Plunder Run is definitely a card that needs to go. I think we will see more cards like Polar Blast, So Tomorrow, and Electrify. There's 1 cost, here's a bonus, and if you play it from Arsenal, you get to draw a card. Because it's actually a really, really subtle setup effect. It's saying you took the time to put this card into Arsenal, so you get to be rewarded. You need an extra card in hand, and you get a little bonus to your strategy in return for the setup, in return for the fuse, and in return for spending a resource. I really think we'll see more of those cards, and I think we'll see more of that cost, where it's 1 card to draw a card from Arsenal, is actually, I think, where we'll see a lot of things balance out in the end. Dustblade going, I'm not going to give any words to it. Dustblade was broken, badly designed, badly tested, has to go. What I pointed out in my last video about bans, and I kind of said that if we saw bans before Everfest, then we should be kind of worried for the power level of the cards in Everfest. That's what I said in my last video. Essentially, we're in a situation now where hopefully The robust internal testing at LSS has decided that with these 3 cards and this errata still not made, that Briar would just continue to dominate whenever Fest comes out. But kind of what that tells you is that the Runeblade cards and maybe the generics in Everfest were going to help Briar a bit more, and so they had to make this change before Everfest came out. But I will say, so when we're thinking about this, it is important to understand that design cycles in terms of when Everfest was probably signed off, it was probably finalized before the national season. It was probably finalized before Lightning Briar really kicked off. And I've already said that as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that the devs cracked Lightning Briar internally. They can say whatever they want, but I think if they had seen it, they would have changed her ability before putting it live. I think that Lightning Briar caught them by surprise. I think they... What's the best way to phrase this? When you're playtesting a game that features this many, and I call them factions now, they're basically horizontal factions, where Elemental Runeblade is a faction that can only play certain cards, and you've got another faction that can only play certain other cards. When you're testing a game with this many factions, and each game takes 55 minutes, it is really, really hard for a small team to collectively get enough testing done to play through every single iteration and possible combination of decks that could be played out of a specific faction. In my mind, I am fairly certain, and this is unbased speculation, but just from seeing how things have played out, that the remit for playtesting internally is to playtest the new cards and find exciting new ways to break those cards, and maybe isn't properly considering the full library of cards that are available combined with a new hero. And what I mean by that is that people would have tested Briar and the new Fusion Earth Elemental cards, maybe with some CNCs and things like that mixed in, and probably would have tested the Earth Briar deck, because that's what comes out of using as many Elemental cards as possible, and maybe wouldn't have been incentivized internally to test with older cards and really break that meta through the Lightning Briar build that we ended up seeing, which primarily runs a lot of generics. So it's kind of worth thinking and asking that question as to whether or not we feel like the testing prioritizes new cards, which it does need to, but of course there is that problem when you only have a small testing team testing a long game, which takes 55 minutes per game. You can play a game in half an hour, but if you want to test a hero like Oldhim, it's going to be taking 40-55 minutes a game. To really get to the heart of building all these decks and trying new things while also working on the next set. So it's a bit of a problem. And I do think that's one of the reasons that I keep saying that I think LSS needs to expand their playtest to include external groups. There are, by the way, for all the people worrying about leaks, like there obviously are risks of leaks when you expand your group externally, but we have a lot of like watermarking software and things like that where, to download the PDF, it puts your email on every page and card image and that kind of thing, which you can't get rid of very easily. We have a lot of stuff like that basically says, can make a group, make a leak specifically traceable. And this is, I know this from just work I have done, because we used to do this when we were playtesting, is you get a PDF for your group, which would have your group name on every single card, and you couldn't show them to anyone or print it or print screen or print it out without people seeing exactly where the card came from. And people would also get given different versions and different iterations of the playtest document. So if you leaked a card that had, Command and Conquer with 7 attack, they would know exactly that you were the group that leaked, because no other group was given a card with Command and Conquer with 7 attack. So there's lots of ways to protect yourself from leaks. And also by making people sign a robust NDA and paying them for the work, or making them just sign a robust NDA and not paying them, you can build a robust playtesting environment that is fairly leak-proof, because it's in people's best interests not to leak and not to get kicked off the playtesting. The only time really that it starts to break down is when the playtesters aren't being listened to and the feedback isn't very good, because then people will be quitting playtest quite strongly and will do so with the idea that they don't care if they leak, because they're not being listened to and the playtesting is terrible anyway. But if you run a good playtesting system with these robust leak protections in play, there's nothing stopping you running a strong internal test team of 40, 50, 60 people, maybe like 10, 15 groups of people giving you feedback and just seeing how that goes. So there's just things, there's ways to avoid doing this. And also remember that when I say you have to find 55 minutes to test classic constructed heroes, when you're also testing and balancing for limited, and a draft can take 2 hours, again, you're running out of time as a team to actually build this and do this well. So, you can really feel the points where it feels that maybe resources weren't properly, put in, and maybe things weren't properly tested. And Duskblade is one of those instances. The plunder run stuff doesn't even faze me. Like, games will always miss. This is just a fact of games. Games will always miss power level early on in their games because you cannot properly predict how a game power level will settle before that game gets into people's hands and people have a chance to try and break it. I have never seen a game, a card game at least, that didn't have a few cards that were off the power level intended for the long-term plan of the game in the first 2 or 3 sets before the designers really had a chance to see how people would break the game and how things would actually, go out. So don't really be disheartened by that. All game designers have to learn how their game actually gets played and actually gets balanced by people once it's out there in public. And really, you can't have a situation where every card is going to be perfect from the start. So really, when you'll see these older cards retired, and you'll see the development of a new baseline for those cards, which is probably the pay 1 draw a card from Arsenal that we've seen in Tales of Aria. And then it just makes sense that Plunder Run doesn't match that anymore. So it needs to be retired, especially if there isn't rotation. You leave 90% of the cards that are fine intact, but you get rid of the 10% that don't match the power level you need for the game. What else is going on? So I just want to stop now and talk about just my plans for 2022, just so everyone is au fait with what's going on with me, and you can decide whether or not you want to be on this journey with me. So we're going to be aiming for sort of like 1 video a week during quiet periods. Maybe once every 2 weeks if it's a very quiet period. I'm firmly of the opinion that I have no intention of, and I've always said this to people watching my channel. I think you guys appreciate it. I'm not the sort of person who jumps on at every moment to make a video about every single thing that happens. I want to talk about bans because I think they're very, very relevant. I want to talk about metas. I do like to talk about spoilers, but only when I've got a good enough grasp of what's coming out to actually make predictions and meta predictions and stuff like that. There's something I learned from doing the Tales of Aria spoilers, is that people didn't really like it when I only talked about 1 or 2 cards and made wild speculations based on that. But once I started to get, say, 10 or 11 cards, then suddenly it became okay, what's happening in the meta? What's the next thing we're going to see? What should we expect from the heroes in this set? Those kind of videos got a lot more positivity. So I'm going to be focusing on tightening that up and doing that this time. Other things I'm working on, I'm still doing my new player intro video series. The next part of that project is to get one person from every class who loves every single hero to come on and do sort of like a 30-minute, 1-hour video interview with me where we talk about why they really like that hero. Is it theme? Is it power level? Is it play style and lines of play? What really gets them excited to play that hero and keeps them coming back? Because I want new players to go through the video series that I've started uploading. They're going to look at the overview. They're going to see a hero that really catches their attention. Are like, oh, that Dash, she seems really cool. I want to put items in. They're going to go and watch my 10-minute introductory video on Dash, get an idea of the cards they need to buy. And then if they're still not sure, and the strategies and all those things, and then if they're still not sure, they're going to watch my 40-minute interview video where they're listening to someone who's been a Dash player since day one, who loves playing Dash, talk about why Dash is their favorite hero. And once they've made that journey, they should feel quite confident, I would say, in either knowing how to play Dash, but also confident in making their first steps towards building that Dash deck, confident that, say, Dash is the hero they want to invest money into getting the cards for, and those kind of things. Because one of the things, people have been saying Flesh and Blood is expensive to get into. I don't disagree that finishing a deck is expensive. Getting those last pieces of expensive equipment is expensive. I don't think the initial steps into Flesh and Blood are that expensive because, because of the horizontal design, buying your Majestics for a specific class, not actually that expensive. Buying your Majestic equipment for a certain class, not actually that expensive. It's the legendaries that really do it. Everyone knows that. And it's the E-Strikes and the CNCs. Hot take, those 2 are getting reprinted in Everfest. If they're not, I'm going to be shell-shocked and really, really surprised. They just need to be reprinted. They're too stapley for the environment to not be reprinted in Everfest. especially CNC. E-Strike you could argue for, but CNC just needs to be reprinted. If it's not in the set, I'm going to be really shocked. It's way too expensive. But my point is, I want new players to have confidence that the hero they pick is the one they want, and I want them to have resources to get that confidence before they even start buying Majestics or things like that. And I think the video series I'm working on is really... I've already had a load of positive comments from new players saying, hey, you know, your video series made me really think I wanted to play this hero. And they also appreciated the fact that I gave them an idea of the current power level of the hero. They said that was very useful because some people are like, look, I really love the look of Azalea, but after watching your video and reading up some stuff, I realized that actually I do want to be more competitive than Azalea dictates. Because one of the things we talk about in those videos is understanding the sort of player you are and understanding whether you want to be competitive or you want to play Flesh and Blood for theme. Because obviously if you want to play Flesh and Blood for theme, pick whatever hero you want that looks fun, that you enjoy the playstyle of, and just play it until you get bored of playing Flesh and Blood or you want to play another hero. If you want to play it to win, then you have to listen to the meta videos and figure out what you want to do and play the heroes that are good. So those videos will be updated, maybe when Everfest comes out, if they cause significant updates to the classes. If it's just like, oh, it gets a power level boost, I'm not going to update them. But if it's like, there's a massive new gameplay mode for Dash, then I'll do an update to the video. Aside from that, obviously I'm going to be doing videos around the pro quests. I'm wondering if you guys like tournament reports or not. Let me know. I can do tournament reports for the events I go to. I can do a deck tech for every event that I go to, though I will probably play the same deck at all the pro quests, maybe mix it up a little bit, but I am notorious for playing the same deck. Let me know if there are specific decks you want me to talk about and review. I'm playing Ultim and Viserai at the moment. Those are the two decks I'm playing. The Viserai list is very close to Matt Rogers. The Ultim list is my own brew with a few friends, which is it's quite good. I quite like it. It's kind of like aggressive, but not, you know, but still quite defensive as well. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, any other content ideas people have for the year, just send them my way. Steelfur L5R, so Steelfur L5R, Legend of the Five Rings, so L5R at gmail.com. I had people send in some content suggestions and ideas. I have read them. You know, some of them are just a bit too time intensive, but you know, there's still some interesting thoughts in there. Aside from that, obviously, if I get a PT, I'm going to go to wherever the Pro Tour is. That's on the list. My other goals this year is to cast more Flesh and Blood. I've done plenty of video game casting in the past, and I want to do more casting of Flesh and Blood. Online events, I don't, you know, I can cast them. They're not, you know, I did the French tournament restream. That was fun. I was also down, so you probably don't know this because I haven't really talked about it, but I was down to be one of the people casting at the Utrecht calling, which unfortunately had to be cancelled because of COVID. But I have been told, and I think hopefully that if there's no NDA, you know, it's not going ahead, so it's a default. But I have been told that maybe, well, hopefully the next big European Flesh and Blood event, I and my friend Kugane from Kugane Gaming will be the casters for that as well. So hopefully that comes to fruition when the next event comes around. You know, I was asked once. I hope I'll be asked again. If I'm not, well, clearly I haven't been putting the work in on my channel, but here's hoping that when that calling, you know, when there's the next calling or the next big European event, I'm down on the shortlist for that. I really would love to spend the weekend just casting an event, take a bit of the pressure off of having to compete, but obviously competing is fun as well. So I'll be going to whatever callings or pro tours I can get an invite to, whatever events happen in Europe. I'll be putting budget aside to travel to those events, so you expect to see me there. And this is just going to be a great year for playing Flesh and Blood, I think. You know, and obviously I'll be trying to win. I won't probably be putting like mad effort into every single high level event that comes around. Like, I'm not going to go mad for a calling 1 month and then go mad for a pro tour the next month. It does have to have a certain amount of peaks and troughs, just because I have a lot of other things to do, work, gardening. Been doing a lot of gardening recently, guys. It's actually starting to become a problem. My garden was an absolute tip. It was covered in ivy and brambles. I've cleared all of that. I've burnt a load of it. I've just been doing like an hour or two a day. It's really intense work, but it's quite fun. I've also got just other stuff and projects and things like that going on. I'm actually I'm going to be renovating a house. Not myself. I'm going to be getting an architect to renovate a house, but I'll have to move and all these other things. So there may be content lulls when stuff like that is going on, but typically you can expect a video a week, every 2 weeks from me for the rest of the year, as long as there is interesting stuff to talk about. I'm also going to start to do more work, hopefully, on, I think, deck techs and things like that, because I know people quite like hearing about decks and seeing people play them. I do need to get an in-person recording camera so I can just record my weekly Flesh and Blood on Wednesday nights or something like that. And just adding more of that stuff to my Ko-fi. Coffee. I have a Ko-fi page. It's basically Patreon, but based in the UK, so I pay less tax, which is smart. As always, if you want to support my channel, you can do it through there. I'm really appreciative of any support I get. You know, and I'm working on what sort of rewards would be appropriate for those guys. At the moment, it's just support my channel. If you like what I'm doing and you want to, you know, provide a bit of, hey, you're doing a good job, pat on the back, that kind of thing. Then that's kind of what it is. But I do want to give those people more for supporting me. I think the current plan is just to set up a Discord and try and get some games in with them once every week or two, and just, like, you know, talk through what's going on in those games, play some meta decks, that kind of thing. So if that sounds of interest, let me know and we can get that set up. But that's it, really. I mean, obviously, if you like this video, please do like and subscribe. This is very much my Steelfur Speaks, which, for those of you who don't know but are still listening, is very much my sort of podcasty, talk about everything kind of format playlist. My other playlist, Steelfur Supreme, is more of a competitive meta decks kind of focused playlist. So, you know, sign up to this one and listen into it if you want just Flesh and Blood chats and you like the sound of my voice and you like the fact that I'm not American and I have that lovely British accent thing going on. If you want just meta updates, deck techs, that kind of thing, sign up to the Steelfur Speaks playlist and just listen to that when it gets updated, because I do meta updates and things like that. My last one was just before Christmas. Thanks a lot for listening, and have a great time, day, week, month, evening, wherever you are. Have a good one, and talk to you soon.